Ladies and gentlemen, the bloodiest thing that ever happened in front of a camera.
Hi, my name is Dan, and this is the first episode of the Cinephoria Show. And the first episode is going to be my top 10 favorite films of 1998. So I'm going to give a little bit of background into what led to this, kind of some of the rules I'm going by, the films that can and can't qualify for the list. So if you want to skip all that nonsense, you can go right to the first pick, my number 10. I got my timestamps below, so you can skip right there. So, a little bit of background that led into this list, and like I said, some of the rules I'm going by, is that me and a buddy of mine, we have another show together, and this was originally going to be for that show, but since I'm doing this kind of solo, I thought I'd rather just, make it its own thing, put it on its own show, and, this gives me an opportunity to also talk about some other stuff, so the show won't just be, lists and all that, but when it comes to 1998, what happened was I randomized a year from 1930 to 2020, and my reasoning for that was, I think 1930 is probably a good starting point. There's plenty of amazing films, in the 20s, but I don't know how tricky it would be to put together 10 films per year, one feature films and two films that are readily available. So I feel like 1930 is probably a good starting point for that. And also at the time I'm recording this, it's also 2021, so there's still films this year that I haven't seen yet that I probably won't see until next year. So I figured, giving a year, the previous year would be easier. So, like, for example, next year I'll do from 1930 to 2021 and so on and so forth. So 1998, which is the year that came up, and at the end of this list, we'll randomize it again, and we'll see what the next year is. So the rules that I go by is that, so I give myself 3.5 months-ish to just watch as much as I can, and then put together that way, because I still have so much other stuff to watch that I can't solely devote to just 1998 films, or solely devote just to 1 year. So there's other stuff I'm watching, so I try to hit all the big ones, and then from there try to get the ones that I think I'll like. I also don't, so I have like a long list of films, and I don't add films that, one, I have seen that I know I don't like, and two, films that I don't think I'd like. So, like, for example, I didn't rewatch, like, the Psycho remake, because I'm not a fan of that, and, like, I didn't put, like, Patch Adams on the list, because I knew I wasn't going to be a fan of that, so what's the point? I tried to only watch films I think I'd like. But there's going to be films, like, there's plenty of films. There's a couple films that I just didn't have an opportunity to see. I think the two big ones that I just couldn't find, I really wanted to watch, but I just wasn't able to get to, or to find without spending a lot of money on a DVD or a Blu-ray, is Eternity in a Day and Black Cat, White Cat. Those were two that I really wanted to watch. Eternity in a Day especially was one I've been really wanting to see for a while, and I tried, I had trouble trying to watch it online, so I wasn't able to get to it. The only two big ones that I didn't get to, the first one was Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I haven't seen that film, and if I'd known about it a little bit earlier, I would have made a priority to watch that, but I didn't get a chance to. And the second being, I started watching Dark City, which is one I know a lot of people like, and halfway through where I was watching it was giving me issues, and I wasn't able to finish it, and I didn't go back and finish that because halfway through it wasn't a bad film, because it wasn't really for me, and I knew that I got other films I gotta watch, and there really wasn't enough there for me to go out and finish it. Also, films that qualify and don't qualify. So the rule here for me is that it has to have been made publicly available in 1998. And so, for example, if a film came out in, Brazil in like June 1998, and then it played at a festival the same year, then it counts. And let's say it wasn't released everywhere else until the next year. To me, it counts as 1998 because it was released first. So festivals I'm not counting. So there's films that played at a festival in 1998 that weren't seen publicly until 1999. So, so a couple films that I didn't watch or rewatch because they are listed as 98 but weren't publicly seen outside of a festival until 99 or later was Afterlife. That was one I really wanted to watch, but it wouldn't qualify for me. I Stand Alone by Gaspar Noé, or no, I don't want to say his name. I really wanted to watch that as well, but the same. And Bullet Ballet by Shinya Tsukamoto. Those three films are sometimes listed as 98, but and I saw some people list like Afterlife as like their favorites of the year. But for me, because it wasn't seen outside of a festival until afterwards, it doesn't count for me. So, and I'm not really going by a specific place it was publicly seen, because some films get released at like, some of the films on my list didn't get released in America theatrically that I was going through. So, or the list I was going off of. So, for example, like a film would be released in Japan and then it'd, play everywhere else like later and stuff. So, as long as it was seen publicly outside of a festival in 1998. It counts. So that's my main rule. So if there's a couple films that maybe you're like, oh, this is 1998, or you didn't watch or anything like that, it's probably because of that. And at the end of the list, I'm going to go through. I'll just rank all the ones that I saw, because I think in total I watched in about a 3.5 month span for 1998. I think I watched about 55 or 56 films. So I got all the heavy hitters. I mixed in ones I think I'd like. So I think I got a good variety here. And also the important thing as well that I really need to emphasize, that this is my favorites of the year. This isn't the best films of the year. I don't really believe in like objective best. Like, I'm all for just favoritism, but there's plenty of like probably objectively better made films that would be higher on the list. So like, for example, a movie like The Thin Red Line, which is a terrific film, Terrence Malick's film, I really like that film a lot. If I'm talking about the best made films of the year, that would definitely be up there, because I mean the craft that Malick does in that film is terrific. Just the characters, the way the action scenes are shot, it's phenomenal. But it didn't make my list, because there's other films I like more of it. Like, I got two comedies on my list, and one of which you'd probably be like, that probably won't be on anybody's list, but I'm going by favorites. So there's gonna be ones that I'm gonna rank, like my number one and my number two are two that I really went back and forth on, and I'll explain why when I get to it. In terms of favorites. So that's really it. Like I said, this is all just for fun. I'm not trying to. I'm not an expert. I'm just, I thought it'd be just a fun challenge to do, see what I can watch in a 3.5 month span, and just go from there. And overall, I think 1998 is a pretty good year, at least from what I watched. I noticed a lot of pretty good films. Not like a handful of great films, but this wasn't a year that like I saw more films that I thought was okay to pretty good. I had a lot of like middle range kind of films. A lot of films I like. There really wasn't a whole lot this year that I really didn't like. There's only a couple films that I was like, I really didn't like that. There's only one big one that I know was loved, that I wasn't really a fan of. Maybe two films like that, and I won't talk about it in too much depth, because like I said, this is favorites, and when I do my ranking at the end, I'm not gonna talk about every single one, because be here all day. But I was gonna talk about the 10 films here. So I guess with all that said, if anything else I need to say, trying to think, no, I think that's about it. So, alright, with that said, let's get into the list. These are my top 10 favorite films of 1998. Alright, so number 10 on the list is Terry Gilliam's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
I hate to say this, but this place is getting to me. I think I'm getting the fear.
Nonsense. We came here to find the American dream. Now that we're right in the vortex, you want to quit? You must realize, man, we found the main nerve.
That's what gives me the fear.
Look.
What?
There's two women fucking a polar bear.
Don't tell me those things. Not now, man. This is my last drink. How much money can you lend me?
Not much. Why?
I have to go.
Go?
Yeah. Leave the country.
Oh, come down. Shit, you'll be straight in a few hours. Just sit the fuck down.
Oh, fuck
Good.
around, man. This is serious. One more hour in this town, I'll kill somebody.
Okay, I'll lend you some money.
Come with me. I want to leave fast.
Okay, let's pay this bill. Get up very slowly. I think it's gonna be a long walk.
So this film stars Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro, based off the Hunter S. Thompson book, and this film I think is pretty well known. It's basically, and I'm not going to get into the plots of all these films, because I think some of these are pretty, known and talked about, so especially this film is a little tricky to talk about the plot, because basically, I mean, on its surface, it's about Hunter S. Thompson, well, Raoul Duke, played by Johnny Depp, and his lawyer, Dr. Gonzo, played by Benicio del Toro, in Las Vegas, kind of in different pretty much in different like acid trip scenarios. I mean, a lot of the film is for anyone who's seen the film and knows the way it's directed. It's a lot of uncomfortable close-ups, a lot of Dutch angles. It's just this really constant moving a machine. You know, there's not a whole lot of shots in the film that are not moving or are pretty much straightforward on, you know, maybe a handful here and there. And the thing with this film that I think what a lot of films, I guess, try to replicate or try to do in terms of a character or characters that are messed up or on drugs or whatever, is making the audience feel like that. And I think this film does a really solid job at that, but at the same time not losing its enjoyment of the film. I mean, I can imagine that some people probably wouldn't enjoy this film because it is constantly like that. There really is no there's no outsider looking in at these characters who are all you know, drugged up, and which I think works because we don't really need that kind of character. But having these two you know, Johnny Depp being in the film the most, because there was a stretch of the film where Dr. Gonzo was out of it. But on the second viewing, I think two of the things that really came through is, I mean, obviously Johnny Depp's performance is phenomenal. A lot of his little quirks and mannerisms, which have been parodied a bunch. I think everybody's tried to do their own version of this kind of character of the Hunter S. Thompson at this point in his life. It has never really been able to. But it's really a lot of his facial movements, a lot of his body movements. There's a lot of times in the film where the characters, you just really get their mindset. You really feel what they're going through. You can just see the sweat on their face, the nauseating feel of all the lights. I mean, I think who's the cinematographer in this is Nicola Pecorini, I believe, who worked with Gilliam, you know, on a couple different films, but the way this film is shot, it's very, like I said, I think the best word to use is nauseating, where it's almost like overload of all these lights, all the smoking, all the drugs, all the, you know, this is one of those films where it's almost in a reality of its own, where it's like Vegas is like another planet. You know, there's some great sequences, like when they meet up with Penn Jillette, who's telling him all about, you know, the stuff he has going on there, and the humor of this film really comes through well, because it's not just these characters who are, you know, messed up and are trying to interact with quote unquote, you know, more sane people, because this whole, it feels like a whole other world, you know. But just a lot of the times where they're just a lot of what they say, a lot of what they do. There's a whole great sequence where Raul Duke thinks he's in trouble. He's like, I gotta get out of here, and I have to get as far away from here as possible. And I won't say how that whole sequence ends, but the whole wrap up to that scene, he gets a telephone call. That's great. You know, the humor really comes through with this, while being a very it's a dark film, but it's not dour. There's a lot of sequences that go on where it's just you start to maybe not understand them more, but basically at a certain point you kind of let your guard down and really kind of get into the mindset of them. Even when you get into some of the darker moments, like there's that whole sequence in the bathtub where they have the White Rabbit song playing, which another thing too, the soundtrack of the film is really well. It doesn't feel just like needle drops, like they have like Jefferson Starship and stuff, and a lot of sequences in the film where like I said, that White Rabbit sequence is the tension and the intensity of that really does help with the song kind of building up. And I won't say how that scene ends, but it's great. You know, it's like I can see why people maybe wouldn't like the film, because, like I said, it does really kind of keep that same craziness and pace throughout. It really doesn't let up. And I remember the first time that I watched this film, I definitely liked it a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I was, and I still thought it was solid. Don't get me wrong, but I was definitely like, okay, this maybe was a one and done. I don't know if I need to go back and rewatch it again. But the rewatching it for this show, I think I really appreciated it more on not just the performances, but on the directing, on the cinematography. You know, it's got this really kind of foggy haze to it in some sequences, and you know, when you let your guard down and just kind of go on this crazy trip through the desert, and all these other characters that they meet along the way. This film is also really has a lot of other cameos in the film as well. A lot of actors, you know, like Tobey Maguire very early on. Mark Harmon shows up at one point. Like I said, you had Penn Jillette in one sequence, and there's just so many great sequences of the film that I've been parodied so much, and I think that people have this idea of Hunter S. Thompson because of this film, which I think a good follow-up film. I guess I don't know a whole lot about Hunter S. Thompson. So I don't know if this film was take place before or after, but a film like Johnny Depp did later in 2011, The Rum Diary, which I think is really good as well. I actually think this film's kind of underrated. I know a lot of people aren't too crazy about it, but it's him playing that Hunter S. Thompson, but at a different point in his life. Again, I don't know before or after. I really don't know a lot about Hunter S. Thompson, and I've heard that Gonzo documentary is very good. I haven't seen it yet, but this is a really fun film. Above all else, this is a very fun film and a very funny film as well. You're going along for this crazy ride, and I love films that put you in headspaces of these characters. Johnny Depp's performance is great, but also Benicio del Toro is equally great. I mean, he is the closest that we have to a quote-unquote straight man, but then at a certain point, because there's just a whole, I love this, that when they first actually get to the hotel, and Benicio del Toro has to actually keep things together, and he's starting to lose it too. And this is just a really solid film. You know, I think when Terry Gilliam hits like this, he hits really hard, because I'm not crazy about all of his films. You know, he's definitely, sometimes we hit or miss for me, but I think when he really nails it like this, he just does phenomenal work. Yeah, this is a really terrific film, and the rewatch especially really made me appreciate it a lot more, the directing and the acting for sure. So my number 10 pick is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So moving from the deserts of Nevada all the way to the other side of the world in Ireland, we have The General.
They're evicting us. All of us. Got 6 months to get out.
No, can't do that, Francis. We won't leave Hollyfield. No way do we go.
They're offering us a flat in Kevin Street.
Kevin Street? Sure, that's a deliberate insult to a criminal. Them flats is right opposite the cop shop.
They're nice flats, though.
Nice? What's nice? Neighbours that'll cover for you. That's nice. Look at Francis, we're the dregs. We're the lowest of the low. That's why we stick together. That's why we belong in Hollyfield. It's us against them.
Yeah, 4 kids in one little room.
Yeah, but happy. Are our kids happy? Weren't we happy there as kids? Weren't we? No, I won't go. We'll drag them through the courts. As your lawyer, Martin, I have to advise you against it. It'll be expensive, and you'll lose in the end. I don't care what it costs. I pay you, don't I? I know you charge me twice what you ask civilians. Yeah, you robbed me without breaking into my house. You break in through the fucking letterbox.
So also kind of another true story in a way, like Fear and Loathing. But I believe I read that some of this film, it kind of pulls it back a little bit to my knowledge. I don't actually know a whole lot about the real story about this with Martin Cahill, who was an Irish mobster who had pulled off a couple of robberies. And then the great thing about the film is that it's really just a power play back and forth between Martin Cahill, played by Brendan Gleeson, and the police force. So they're really like, they can't get to him, but they know that he did it, so they're constantly on him. You also have John Voight in the film as well, who is really terrific. He plays an inspector in the film, and he's great as well. But the main focus of the film, and I think who is just terrific in the film, is Brendan Gleeson. I'm already a big fan of Brendan Gleeson, and not having seen this film before, I just think he does such a great job here. He's got like this charisma to his performance that you don't like him, but at the same time, he does have these kind of quirks and funny moments that you could see why somebody could like him. I mean, I've heard some comparisons to the film Chopper with Eric Bana, and I think Chopper's more comedic, but that's another film as well where you have this real life guy, this real life criminal, and in that film, maybe you don't ever like him, but he is still very funny in the film, even when he does terrible things. Like one of my favorite sequences in that film is when he messes up a guy pretty bad, and he, but then he takes him to the hospital. He's like, I took you to the hospital. I don't know, it's just great, And there's some moments like that in here. Like, there's a pretty rough torture scene involving some nails, and what happens after where he's like, I don't want to give it all away, but basically his reaction after is sort of like trying to go back in it a little bit, like, all right, let's wrap him up, that sort of thing. I can't really, I don't want to give it all away. But yeah, this is a really solid crime film, and what I really like is that the second half of this film, when it gets more into because the film opens up with something that, maybe, I don't know if I would have opened up the film the same way, because you're kind of waiting for it to come. And I know this is a true story and all, but, somebody like me who doesn't know the true story, I watch, I'm like, okay, but there's just some great moments in the film, like, because Martin is such a stubborn character. There's a whole great part where they need him to move his trailer off the land that they're building something on, and he just will not do it. And the cops are just getting so mad at him, and like, this is just their reaction to that and what they do. It's really great. I think this is it's not quite it's not definitely not a comedy. It's definitely not that. It gets pretty dark, and I've heard that the real Martin Cahill was a more rough person they portray in the film, but there are those comedic sequences that just the stubbornness and just the pure hatred that the cops and him have for each other. Like a scene that I love in the film is when he's getting, I forgot if it was his wife or somebody who was pregnant to the hospital, and the police are really tailgating him, and so he tricks it in a way where he's able to get them to hit his car. Like, he slams on the brakes and they hit his car in public by accident, and he goes out in front of this crowd. He's like, you all saw it, they hit my car, I got a pregnant woman, and he gets them to escort him to the hospital, like Martin, you're a son of a bitch, that sort of thing. It's just moments like that that really make it great, because of, a big part of it is Brendan Gleeson's performance. I think Brendan Gleeson is, which is one of my favorite actors. He's so charismatic, even when he's playing a son of a bitch like this. Like, him and Ray Fiennes have one of the funniest dialogue exchanges in the movie In Bruges.
Harry, let's face it. I'm not being funny. I mean, no disrespect. But you're a cunt. You're a cunt now. You've always been a cunt. And the only thing that's going to change is you're going to become an even bigger cunt.
Maybe have some more cunt kids.
Leave my kids fucking out of it. What have they done? You fucking retract that bit about my cunt fucking kids!
I retract that bit about your cunt fucking kids.
You insulted my fucking kids? That's going overboard, mate.
I retracted it, didn't I?
And I think that really helps adding to just what a great performance, and a great a great performance, and what a great actor he is. I think sometimes Brendan Gleeson is sometimes put to the as made as a side character, but as a leading man, he's phenomenal. Like the film The Guard, I think is really terrific, and he's really funny in that film as well. Playing a character who's a real son of a bitch in that film as well, but is also very funny. The directing of the film as well, I think, is really solid. This is directed by the great John Borman, who's made so many great films. Of course, like Point Blank and Deliverance, and even films of his that I'm not crazy about, like Exorcist, like Exorcist 2. I think the directing of that is really cool here as well, and really cool there as well. I'm sorry. And here is great. I mean, this is shot in black and white. I don't know who shot the film, but some of the action sequences, some of the chase sequences, I think are really great. There's some great tracking shots in an alley, and it really shows you this whole mini world inside of. I believe it takes place in Dublin. That feels very rough. Like, this isn't a very glamorous part of Ireland, but they really show you. They do a really great job at showing you kind of just the scuzzy, more kind of dirty parts of it. But showing like how I'm sure it actually was. I can't, like I said, I can't say for the legitimacy of the real story of the real case. I really don't know. I don't know how it's different. I'm judging this silly on the film on its own. But this is one that if you're a fan of crime films, if you're a fan of, because I say it's a mob film, but it's really not that. He's more of a robber than a mobster. But this is just a really solid crime film that I don't really hear a lot of people talking about, and especially for a great leading performance by Brendan Gleeson, I think this is one that definitely should be seen by more if anyone hasn't heard of it. So, The General, that's my number 9 pick. So, going back to America, and number 8, we have something a little bit different. This is one that people might go, I don't know about this one, but I gotta say it because this movie, I think is absolutely hilarious. R.I.P. Norm Macdonald, that's right, number 8, I gotta give it to Dirty Work.
So you mean to tell me that sweet girl's grandmother runs a whorehouse out of the building we're about to destroy?
Yeah, I feel awful doing this to Kathy.
Hey, Mitch, you're really starting to like this Kathy, aren't you?
No.
Mitch, I know you, man. When you say no like that, you really mean yes.
What are you talking about?
Watch, I'll show you. Mitch, did you ever rob a bank?
No.
Did you ever climb Mount Everest?
No.
Did you ever say that you can see why women find Sean Connery sexy?
No. Okay, so I like Kathy a little bit. Man, I hate the fact that we have to destroy her grandmother's building. But we have to.
Yep.
Yeah, this is the one that you guys might look at me kind of strange. Like I said, I'm going for favorites, and rewatching this film, man, I don't know if I'm just getting sentimental because I love Norm Macdonald, but man, this movie cracked me up. And the funny thing is, the first time I saw it, I really wasn't crazy about it. I was like, yeah, there's a couple funny parts here and there, but I think just rewatching this, maybe it is because he passed away recently, at least at the time of recording this, or I don't know, just a lot of the jokes really landed a lot more for me. Yeah, like I said, it is kind of funny to go from, and we're going to have more kind of traditional films on this list, but it's kind of funny. I look at my top 10, and this one kind of, stands out a little bit as maybe not the wild card, but definitely the one that I guess I can make the list my own. But this premise of this film is totally ridiculous. You have Norm Macdonald playing this guy Mitch, and basically he ends up starting he's always been really good at revenge. That's been his thing. So he opens up a revenge for hire business, and from there we get a lot of different kind of scenarios. The plot in this is super light. He needs to get money for his for Jack Warden's, I think it was a surgery, which I also love. This is, between this and you have like Ernest Borgnine and Basketball, I love these older actors just doing these really dumb comedies. I mean, the whole scene in Basketball, you have Ernest Borgnine, I'm not gonna get into that, but anyways, this film, I mean, I'm sure on an objective level, I'm sure you could probably say it's bad, whatever. This film, it cracked me up this time. Artie Lange's really funny as well. They have a great back and forth. Of course, Chris Farley is in there, and this is one of his last films, and he's great in the film as well. He has a good running joke. A lot of comedians pop up in this. Like, there's a whole great scene with David Koechner where in a scene that could have easily come out of like Used Cars, with Kurt Russell. Basically, Norm Macdonald rigs it in a way where he needs to get a commercial on TV. So I won't give away the whole sequence, but basically puts some stuff in. David Koechner is is running this car dealership, and they're shooting a commercial for TV, and a live commercial. You know, go figure. It's a live commercial. God forbid if anything goes wrong. But they do something to the cars that I won't give away. But yeah, this is a film where it's just a lot of funny scenarios in this. I think Norm Macdonald is basically just playing himself. I mean, Norm Macdonald said that he didn't really want to be an actor because he really is just playing himself. Even in a film like The People vs. Larry Flint, when he shows up kind of briefly, you really kind of see it more as him, as Norm Macdonald in that role, because even actually in that film, Milos Forman wanted to give him a bigger part, but Norm Macdonald kind of, he turned down a bigger part because he's not an actor. And for this film, I think it's totally fine. I never saw that film that he did with Dave Chappelle that came out after. I think, actually, speaking of Larry Flint, I think Larry Karaszewski and Scott Alexander wrote that, to my knowledge. I haven't seen that film. I've heard some not so great things about it, but here I think he really shines as well. Because, you know, as it's going along, there's just different sequences. There's a whole great scene where, you know, he puts some raw fish into somebody's house and how that goes wrong. And I think it's just really the charisma of Norm Macdonald that really elevates a lot of material, because I don't know how much of the film is improvised. I don't know how many jokes were actually planned in advance, because I mean, he is listed as a writer as well with Frank Sebastiano and Fred Wolf, so I don't know how much that is just the writing itself or it is just Norm, but there's just, you know, a lot of great visual gags too. There's a whole great scene with Artie Lang sticking his ass out the window, and there's a great scene where they take hallucinogenic brownies as part of a test because they need to get money, and there's some great cameos in that. Like, I won't say the Norm Macdonald sees somebody in the front seat of his car, and I tell you, just there's that visual shot of that one actor, I won't say, just reading a newspaper and smiling, I think is the funniest thing. I mean, this comedies are really tricky to recommend because, like I said, the first time I saw this film, I really wasn't crazy about it. I was kind of like, it's alright, and then, you know, I thought about it more and more, and I think I had watched it because Norm Macdonald had passed, but watching this again, I mean, there's just so much of this film, so many lines. I think with the way the film is edited as well, I think it's something that a lot of comedies you kind of take for granted for is the editing. A lot of jokes don't linger too long, and the film is short too. It's about under an hour and a half. It's about an hour 20 or so, and I think a lot of comedies now, especially, we were going through that weird period, a lot of those Judd Apatow movies where they were like 2.5 hours, and I'm like, man, I mean, sure, there's exceptions, of course, you know, it's a Mad World is a classic film, but, that, you know, there's exceptions, but I don't want to see a 2.5 hour comedy, so here, it gets in and out, and not all the jokes work. I mean, like, you know, there's definitely a handful that I just kind of like, I don't really know about that, but because there are so many in here, I think more work than don't, and the ones that do work, make me laugh really hard, so this is definitely the wild card pick, I would say, but, at the end of the day, man, this movie just cracks me up. Of all the movies on the list here, this is one I'd probably be the quickest to go back and watch again and again, for me, for obvious reasons, because some I think are just better films overall, but this is the one of my top 10 I'm going to go back to and watch again and again and show people, and I really just think this is a great film, and R.I.P. Norm Macdonald, you know, it was one of a kind, and just one of the funniest people to ever live. So that's my number 8, is Dirty Work. So going back to something a little more serious, we have a directorial debut from Mr. Darren Aronofsky. We have Pi.
What do you do?
I work with computers, math.
Math? What kind of math?
Number theory. Research, mostly.
No way, I work with numbers myself. I mean, not traditional. I work with the Torah. Amazing! You know, Hebrew's all math. It's all numbers. You know that? Yeah, look. The ancient Jews used Hebrew as their numerical system, eh? Each letter's a number. Like the Hebrew A, Aleph, it's 1. B, Bet, it's 2. You understand? But look at this. The numbers are interrelated. Like, take the Hebrew word for father. Av, Aleph, Bet. 1, 2 equals 3. All right? Hebrew word for mother, Aim, Aleph, Mem. 1, 40 equals 41. Sum of 3 and 41, 44. All right? Now, Hebrew word for child. All right? Mother, father, child. Yelad. That's 10, 30, and 4. 44. Torah is just a long string of numbers. Some say that it's a code sent to us from God.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's just kid stuff. Check this out, okay? The word for the Garden of Eden, Kedem. Numerical translation, 144. Now the value of tree of knowledge, all right, in the garden, right? Eitz HaChaim, 233. 144, 233. You can take those
Fibonacci
numbers. So, the
You know, like the Fibonacci sequence.
Fibonacci.
Fibonacci is an Italian mathematician in the 13th century. If you divide 144 into 233, the result approaches theta.
Theta?
Theta. The Greek symbol for golden ratio, golden spiral.
Wow. I never saw that before.
And talk about a hell of a debut. Another film that I forgot to mention that I didn't watch was Following by Christopher Nolan, which is kind of funny because Christopher Nolan's one of my favorite directors, and I really wanted to see that film, but I just didn't get a chance to. But another one of my favorite directors, Darren Aronofsky, this is his debut film, and I think he just totally knocked it out of the park on this one. Like Fear and Loathing, this is a film that the first time I saw it, I definitely liked it a lot. I thought it was really solid, but on a rewatch this time, this movie really kind of just floored me. What a hell of a swing and a home run for a debut, man. This is just a really, really tight psychological drama, pretty much. The plot in this film is a little bit loose as well. I know I said I wasn't going to explain all the plots, but you know, it's pretty loose on this and more about kind of the characters. But we have this character Maximilian, played by Sean Goulet, who is pretty much a genius. He's a mathematician. You can ask him any mathematic formula, and he knows it off the top of his head like that. And basically, he has these people in his lives who he sees. He has like a mentor played by what's his name from Breaking Bad. I'm forgetting what his name is. Of course, he's a great actor. All I know is he's Breaking Bad. But he builds a supercomputer, and then from there starts running into these kind of people who, because he believes that everything is connected through numbers. So there's a formula that you can find that will unlock like basically the ultimate code, and that's not really a great plot synopsis, I know, but throughout the film Maximilian has these horrible headaches, these migraines. Actually, I believe there's actually a name for it. It's called like these like suicide migraines or something, which is like just an unbelievable pain and sort of the mental stress that he goes under. He's living in New York, and there's constantly noise, and also shot in black and white as well. It's very everything. I get this vibe. Everything's really like kind of dirty around him. It's very like it's like everything in his head is kind of like portrayed on screen. Because of like black and white, numbers everywhere. The people that he runs into, he starts running into this one main Hasidic Jew, I believe is the name. I forgot, don't know the actor's name, I apologize. But Lenny Meyer, I'm sorry, played by Ben Shankman. And he starts running into him and how he's connected to possibly, because Lenny starts talking about how a lot of what he sees as well in the, what's the name for it? How like a lot of stuff in Hebrew is connected that way, and how he kind of introduces Maximilian to a lot of the patterns that way, and basically trying to find this code that may or may not even exist. It's basically a mental breakdown of this character who also happens just to be obsessed with numbers. And like Fear and Loathing, I guess there's a lot of comparisons you can make to that film. This is definitely a smaller scale film, and there's a lot of just what I love is that a lot of rogue filming. So there's a lot of times they just go on the street and they just film it like that. There's sequences on like a train station that took a while to film because they're just going out there and filming it. And the black and white in this film, I think I think that was such a, even I don't think it was a choice. I think that was just how he had to shoot it. I don't actually know the specifics of it, but I think the black and white adds to such a nightmarish kind of quality about the film, because that's the thing, the film feels like a nightmare but still makes sense in a way, because there's a lot of, in the second half, mostly in the third act, is where it gets really very visual. There's a lot of really cool, interesting, kind of just strange stuff. You get like a whole thing with like a brain in a sink, which kind of ties into the end of the film about like just all the knowledge that he's gaining and all the problems that he's running into. The film, it just feels like a natural, like even at the start, you feel uneasy, you feel like queasy in a way, and then as it goes on, you're getting more into his headspace, and you're wondering, is there a conspiracy against him? There's these people who are running into him who would need to talk to him, that he doesn't want to talk to them, and he ends up kind of getting into deep with them, and the problems that he gets into along the way. This is definitely a film that's more about kind of just experiencing with the character, because we're following Maximilian the entire way, so as his gradual mental breakdown is happening, we are feeling it as well. We really do feel the world around him. Of what's real, what isn't. Is there a conspiracy against him with the numbers connecting? Is there a pattern to all this, And they talk about the actual, pattern of pi, 3.14, just this endless string of numbers. Is there a pattern in that, in trying to solve that as well? I think that, this is a film that I definitely, Aronofsky is a smarter person than I, so there's definitely a lot here that that I just totally went over my head. Probably somebody could probably break this down and make like a pattern, make more sense of it. But just purely as a surface level just experience of a film, this is a film I would just love to see in a theater. This is one that even though it is it's low budget, but it does a lot with its budget, and it actually almost works better in a way, because I can't imagine this film. I like how with this film, whether intentional or not, how this area of New York, I think it's in Chinatown, it feels like to me it feels like there's nothing really outside of this world. It's really just like, because we're following Maximilian, everything that we follow through him is in this small area of New York, and nothing matters outside of it. All the people that he knows are inside it, like a pattern in a way. Which, if that makes sense, great. If not, well, I try to explain the best I can. But the acting as well, I think is really great. Obviously, Sean Gillette's in the film is really solid in the film, but Ben Shankman, who plays Lenny, I think he's really great in the film. He's kind of funny when he first comes in. He's kind of like messing around a little bit at like a diner or something, and I really like how he becomes more and more into the story. And the actor I was saying before from Breaking Bad, Mark McGuinness, who plays Saul, who plays his mentor, and their relationship, how some of the monologues they have or some of the dialogue they have back and forth, I think is really solid as well. All the acting in this I just thought was great. It's got one of these soundtracks where it's this I don't know about music theory or anything like that, but like the bass in this film, it feels very much like something like this impending kind of doom constantly through it. It's not like a hard hitting soundtrack. It's just these constant undertones that you just feel and you watch it and you just feel uneasy. And a lot of the sound production of the film, there's like parts like a telephone just constantly going off, and it becomes like annoying, and you get into the headspace of Maximilian of just this constant noise, this constant pattern, if you will. And then when it goes to at the end, I just thought it was such a strong ending and such a strong finality to the film that it's just great, man. Like I said, I think Darren Aronofsky he's one of these filmmakers who I just feel like everything he does, even whether or not I like it or not, some films I obviously feel strongly more than others, but he's always just doing these really wild and interesting dark things, whether it's Requiem for a Dream or Black Swan or Mother. Whether or not you like the films, I think he's always trying to do something about a breakdown of a character, and I haven't seen all those films. I think there's like 2 or 3 I haven't seen, but I think he's really great at just following a deterioration of a character and giving you that kind of nightmare headspace. I really, I'm a big fan of Mother, because that film, especially in the second act, or I'm sorry, in the second half, mostly in the third act, is when you really start to feel this kind of nightmarish quality where nothing's making sense. But like this film, when things don't make sense, you still kind of go along with it. Like I said, a hell of a debut film. This is one of Aronofsky's best films that he's made, and I just think that on a second viewing, like Fear and Loathing, I just thought this was absolutely phenomenal, and I think if I watch it again, I'm going to like it even more. Really terrific film. So on something a little bit lighter, going to the only other, I guess, full-on comedy on this list, we're going to go to France for a movie called The Dinner Game.
La Tour Eiffel, entièrement faite avec des allumettes, 346 422 exactement.
C'est vous qui avez fait ça?
C'est une de mes plus belles pièces.
J'en tiens. Comment est-il? Un champion du monde.
J'en sais trac, moi. Laquelle?
C'est pas vrai. Tu l'as invité ici?
Je voulais l'étudier un peu avant de l'emmener dîner. Tu vas voir, il paraît qu'il est fabuleux.
Allez, bonne soirée. Et tâchez d'être brillant, hein.
Le temps ne fait rien à l'affaire quand on est con.
Un dîner de cons. Vous ne connaissez peut-être pas le principe. Chaque invité amène un con.
Oui, il est là, oui. Il a une belle tête de vainqueur.
Qu'on ait 20 ans, qu'on soit grand-père.
Alright, so when it comes to comedies in 1998, I mean, Dirty Work is the one I'm going to rewatch again and again, but I think The Dinner Game is one that I do like more overall, honestly, and this is one that I don't really hear a lot of people talking about, but I was just surprised at how strong and how tight the script was. I mean, and this is a pretty short film as well, like I was saying, with a movie like Dirty Work. It's like an hour 20-ish for a comedy, maybe an hour and a half tops. I mean, that's really kind of the sweet spot, and this film especially, I think, uses that runtime really well, because the script in this film, and this film was written by Francis Weber, I believe that's how you say his name, I apologize if I messed it up, is really strong. Because basically we have this film, we have these two guys, we have this main guy, Pierre, played by Terry Lemine, I believe that's how you say his name. I'm really bad with foreign names, by the way, in case you didn't know. But he and his, I think it's his company or his friends or something like that, they have like an annual kind of, maybe not annual, I forget. They have this dinner every now and then, and it's basically they have to find the biggest idiot they can to bring to the dinner, and whoever, brings the biggest idiot wins or whatever. Kind of like the movie Dogfight with, River Phoenix, something similar like that. They have to bring the ugliest girl. And Dogfight's actually a really terrific film as well. Any excuse I can bring to bring up Dogfight is it's just a great film. Keep an eye out for that as well. But basically from there, he finds this guy in a train, Francois, played by Jacques Villeret, and Francois is pretty eccentric. You know, he has this whole thing where he makes these recreations of like famous landmarks with matches and stuff, and he's like knows the exact amount of matches and all that stuff. And from there, he's like, okay, this guy is the idiot, so I'm gonna bring him to dinner. And what I like about this film is that it's, without, not a spoiler, but you never get to the dinner. The point of the film is that, I mean, it's a pretty crappy thing to do. He's bringing this guy who, I mean, the thing about Francois is that he's not even an idiot. He's a bit eccentric, sure. He's like one of these guys who maybe is like a, little quirky, but he's not a bad guy at all. He's like, he's just an eccentric guy who has this kind of has his hobby. And what I love about the film is that you think it's gonna be one thing, and then it turns out to be really more so kind of just like a great sequence after another of just things getting worse and worse, and characters coming in and leaving, trying to solve a problem, and another problem comes of it. I mean, the film, like I said before, the script in this film is like razor sharp. I think the dialogue in this film is so tight and so funny, like constantly, just the problems that these characters get into, where it's just simple things like just miscommunication, or a character has to come in when they need to actually go, and they're like, oh no, you don't need to send him out, you gotta come back in, and how Pierre is just constantly trying to get himself out of the situation, all the while making sure that that no one knows, that Francois doesn't know that he is being brought to this dinner, because we don't get to the dinner, and that's fine. That's great, because what Pierre is doing already is bad. I mean, he's calling this guy an idiot he doesn't even know, because he's kind of eccentric, and then from there, how that kind of that comes into conflict at a certain point, and how the two kind of help each other out. Francois, who is still a good guy, he tries to get him out of the situation, but then things just get worse and worse, and all these characters come in. I mean, this is one that I know was remade in 2009, I think, 2009 or 10, with Steve Carell and Paul Rudd. That movie didn't for so much. I never saw that movie. It didn't really interest me, but I remember seeing the trailer, and it kind of looked like Steve Carell was, they looked like, and they made him just like way too far in that movie, and they had scenes at the dinner, and it's like, oh, everybody's crazy and eccentric, but like that film I don't have any interest in. It's not really my kind of film, but maybe it's good, I don't know, but this film on its own, I think it's just so sharp, and I mean, it almost entirely takes place in this in the apartment. I mean, there's some shots outside and stuff of like leading up to it, and some of the stuff before and after, but just these characters who come into play back and forth, and you're just watching them, and just it's getting worse and worse. And I think especially what makes this film really solid is like the very end of the film, where it's like they have this great like build up, and then like the final line in this film is like perfect, and then it cuts to the credits, and it's like, man, at that hour 20 runtime, you just totally nailed it, man. This film is hilarious for sure. I don't know how, like, this is like Likes Me other films. I don't know how easily available this is. I had to rent this online, so it is available for streaming, but I'm like, man, this should be readily available in America. I don't, or at least it should have a Blu-ray, like, I'd love to see like Criterion or something put this out, because I think this film is so strongly written and so funny, and it's just constantly moving too. It's never dull. When it's over, it's like, wow, that was just a great funny comedy. So like I said, Dirty Work is probably the comedy in '98 that I'm gonna rewatch more, but this is the one that I just really enjoyed more overall. I thought this was so strong, and yeah, The Dinner Game, just what a great solid movie, man. So that was my number 6, and number 5 is more dramatic, going from a lighter comedy to something like this, is a film I never even heard of before, but yeah, like I said, just kind of floored me, and this is now my number 5 pick. I'm going with Central Station.
In Central Station, there are a million stories. Stories of hopes and sorrows, joys and dreams. But today, an act of destiny will bring two strangers together in Central Station. Winner Best Picture at the Berlin Film Festival. The story of an unmarried woman and a little boy in search of the father he has never known. Together, they will share a journey. That will bring them together, tear them apart. and forge a remarkable friendship you will never forget.
So this is a Brazilian film, one that so Sony Picture Classics had put out, but I never really heard about it, to be honest. And for a film that I never heard of, that I just kind of went into blind, I didn't even know what it was about. Wow, this is just an incredible film. Actually, this is one of these films that the more I've thought about it, the more I've actually liked it more. I wanted to like bump up my rating a little bit. So we follow this main girl, Isadora, played by Fernanda Montenegro, who works as a, she's like a, I don't know if this is actually a real thing or not, but they have like people who will compose letters for you at like stations and stuff. So people will go to her, they want to write a letter who maybe are illiterate or can't write, and she will do it for them. But she's kind of, I mean, she's like she's not like a great chick. I mean, she some of them she doesn't even mail out. She brings a lot of them home and just keeps and just like kind of laughs at these people. And her and her friend, I believe is, gosh, I don't remember her name. But they're both, I mean, her friend's a little more kind of like, but, I mean, Isadora is not a great person. So early on, we have this kid, I think his name is Jose, and without giving anything away, he gets into a really bad accident where he's left on he's involved in a really bad accident where he's left on his own. He's sleeping at the central station. They tell him he has to go. So Isadora, at first, and I don't want to give away plot for beat for beat away, because the way the story evolves, it is you want to see the journey on your own. But at first, she does something pretty bad to the kid. I mean, she does something where it's like, man, that's just terrible. Even her friend is like, man, that's really bad to do. But she's like, all right, you know what? I gotta right the wrong. So it ends up being her and this kid on this road trip where she to find Jose's father. But the thing is that early on in the film, when Jose and his mom end up coming to her because he wants to write a letter to his father, but through some circumstances, she Isadora finds out or realizes that his father is just a bad guy. Ended up abandoning them. He's just a bad dude overall. So it's like she's bringing him on this journey, but she's still having this kind of this complex back and forth about like, I'm bringing him to a bad person. And but it's not like the way that I say that, where it goes to, especially in the second half. Well, especially more so in the third act, probably the last half hour or so. I really just. I thought it was just so touching. This film is never sentimental or cliche. I mean, we have moments where it's like characters are, caring for one another or being, jerks or whatever, but it's not in a cliche way. And I think the camaraderie between Isadora and Jose back and forth is so strong, where you see that gradual kind of build up to him and her annoyance, where she's like, I'm in this situation that I really shouldn't have be in, but she still has enough of a conscience where she's like, all right, I gotta take care of this kid. I gotta look out for him. And where it goes to, and the twists that it take, the reveals that we get are just so powerful and are so I really didn't expect at all, especially where the film goes to at the very end. The very end of this film, the last like 20 minutes, I thought it really moved me, man. I thought it was so touching, and I ended up shedding some tears at the end of this film. I just love the two performances by the two leads. You have Fernanda Montenegro and how do I say this name? Vinicius de Oliveira. Sure, why not? Like I said, I'm really bad at the names, but the journey they go on, and it's almost 2 hours, but there's not a moment of fat in this. It's really the characters they meet along the way, thinking they have a lead on where his father is, but then some things don't work out, and they have to go from there. And then, like I said, the introduction of a couple other characters in the end is so great and touching. And then at the very end of this film, I was just like, wow, it was just a beautiful ending, and just really made me emotional. Of all the films that I watched in 1998, this was the one that I never heard of, that I just watched at random, and the fact that it was so high up on this list, I mean, it's my fifth favorite film of the year. I just love this film. I think it's not cliche, it's not sentimental, it's not hokey, or it doesn't like force the emotions out of you between the bond of these two, of an adult and a kid, but it just works so well and really just really sticks with you. Like I said, the ending of this film is just really powerful, and I love this film. I just think, if anything, this might even be higher, but I think where it is now, I'm pretty okay with. But Central Station, man, just a really great blind watch, and I love this film. I think that I think, if I'm correct, I might be wrong with this, but I thought it was the choice for. I think it got nominated for Best Foreign Film that year at the Academy. I don't know anything about the Oscars, but I think it was something like that, where it was like a front runner or something like that. I really have no idea. Maybe it won. I really couldn't tell you. I don't know a damn thing about the Oscars, but either way, I think people know about this. But if you're like me and hadn't heard of it, it is on YouTube, so I don't. It's not easy. It's not the easiest to get in the States. I believe the DVD's out of print. I mean, you can find it, but it's not. I mean, it's just. look, if a movie's not that accessible to get, I don't really feel too bad about watching some of the stuff online. But yeah, Central Station, really terrific film, and yeah, just really, really powerful film. So one of my favorite kinds of films are gambling films, are card films. People playing cards, people gambling. I'm not a gambler. I don't know how to play blackjack or poker or any of that. I don't know anything about that. And I think probably the big film of '98 when it comes to gambling films is Rounders, and I think Rounders is solid as well. Matt Damon, Edward Norton, really good film. But for my pick, my number 4 favorite film of 1998, a film that I think is really terrific, and I love gambling films with Clive Owen, is Croupier.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy your game.
50 quid for a Diet Coke. Waitresses were the true winners in the casino. The only members of staff allowed to accept tips.
Thank you, Jack. Enjoy yourself, Mr. Chai.
On a good night, they could get between 200 and 300 quid.
Good evening, Mr. Chai.
Evening. Mr. Chai always likes to sit at that table. And only with Bella.
Does he win?
He's a good customer.
A good customer is a consistent loser. But is that what he meant?
Where do you live, Jack?
Over the river.
You got transport?
No.
I'm going over the river. I'll give you a lift if you like.
Nice one. Thanks.
Directed by Mike Hodges. Like I said, Croupier. It's funny. It's actually listed as 1999 some places, but it does count as 98, and I'm glad it does, because I probably would have seen this film without it being for the list, which is funny because, like I said, I love gambling films, I love card films, so I may have would have come across this at some point, but I'm really glad that I watched this for this, because I loved this movie. This is just one of my favorite gambling films. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the high stakes sort of playing. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a gambler. I've been to a casino like twice, and I would not do good, but I love watching films about them. And man, I really this film made me really appreciate just Clive Owen as a lead. I always thought he was a good lead. I've seen him in mostly a lot of like American action films, but in this, I'm like, man, this guy should be playing like more of these kind of roles, because he's one of these characters, or his character in the film. The character name is Jack. He's the smartest guy in the room without having to show it, where basically he's writing a book about like soccer or something, and he ends up getting hired as a croupier at a casino, which is like the dealer, like I guess like the English name for it, because the name for it like in England or whatever. But basically he realizes that slowly his croupier lifestyle starts to creep into the book. He's starting to write more about the book about that, and some of the inner dealings in the casino, some of the people that come in, and then the third act kind of takes more of a not a heist kind of route, but it definitely goes into a direction where he's kind of put into a situation where it's like, just you're a part of this now, because you start to see that he's had sort of like a lifestyle behind him, and he's like one of these guys who's the smartest guy in the room and doesn't ever have to show off about it. He's very quiet. He's very he's one of these characters who like he doesn't really have to showboat a lot. If there's a great part where like a character is like out of place, where a character is like, hey, he's like, Clive Owen is telling them like, no, you can't do that, and the guy is giving him crap about it, and they interact later, and it basically shows you that Clive Owen's really not a guy you want to mess with a whole lot. And what I like about the film is that the morality of his character is not like, he's not a great guy. He screws over another character in a pretty bad way, and there's not that resolution where it's like, oh, but then he works it all out. It's like, no, he's a pretty bad guy, really. Not like a bad guy, but he's definitely looking out for himself. But he makes for such an interesting, cool character where he doesn't have to try. And also, Clive Owen is also just a good-looking guy as is. So anybody, when you see women kind of going to him, you understand that, where he kind of just trying to do his own thing, but getting sucked back into this world. Also, films like this that have narration for a reason, I think is great, where he's explaining all the rules that are going on here, the different types of people that come in and stuff, and we getting it through his perspective, which is great. We see him. It's just funny because he's back home at home, kind of this lonely, kind of like sad life, where he's still seeing women and all that, but he's trying to read his book. He's trying to write his book. I'm sorry, but then outside is just a totally different person. The other characters that he meets up with, he meets up with this girl for a while, who he meets at the casino, who ends up going a different route with, and this film was directed by Mike Hodges, who did, which is funny because you look at his filmography, and I don't think he ever did he mostly did like, I don't know, he did like Flash Gordon and stuff. He did a lot of films, and Get Carter, the Michael Caine film. So it's just, I like his range of films. This is, I don't know if he ever did another film like this, but this film I thought was absolutely terrific. Just really, like, I mean, maybe I'm biased because I do like gambling films as is, so maybe I'm hyping up a little bit more. But I thought the lead performance in this was just so great. All the gambling gambling talk. It's one of these films where they're talking a lot about cards and gambling and playing, but it never alienates you, where some films might, where you'd watch a film and they're getting so in depth with the terminology about poker and cards, that it kind of leaves you kind of on the outside. But here, even though I don't totally get it all, I still just love the talk of it. I think a big part of that is the way that Clive Owen plays the character. I really just think that he is a big reason why I love the film so much, and I think the dialogue is really sharp here as well. I don't know who wrote the film, so Paul Meyersburg wrote the film apparently, and he also wrote stuff like Man Who Fell to Earth and films like that. So, I know, just a really, really solid film. This one is actually pretty readily available. I watch this off Netflix, and I think it's on Amazon Prime as well. But yeah, if you're like me and you love gambling films, you love films like this take place in casinos, I think this is one that you absolutely need to see. I think Rounders is really solid, don't get me wrong. It actually isn't that far down the list, but for my money, this is the one that I bet on, and it's also shorter too than Rounders. It's only about an hour 20 or so, so you can get through this pretty quickly. But great film. I really highly recommend it. This is one that I don't hear enough people talking about, but I think, really just a solid, great film with a great lead performance. So, into the top 3. Alright, so top 3. What will they be? So, number 3 is a film by one of my favorite filmmakers, period, by Peter Weir. This is The Truman Show.
I'm sorry to keep you.
Oh, that's okay.
How can I help?
I would like to book a flight to Fiji.
When would you like to leave?
Today.
I'm sorry, I don't have anything for at least a month.
A month?
It's the busy season. You want to book the flight?
Doesn't matter. I'll make other arrangements. Okay.
Last call for Chicago! All aboard!
Thank you. Windy City, here we come. Hi. Hello. Hi. Sisters?
Mom, isn't that cute over in the front?
Yeah, this is of course a rewatch as well, and like going with the pattern of today, this is the film that on a rewatch, I really, really love this film. Like I said, directed by Peter Weir, is one of my favorite filmmakers, directed one of my all-time favorite films, Picnic to Hanging Rock. He also directed The Last Wave, Dead Poets Society, Fearless with Jeff Bridges, and this was one of his later films that he did, because he only did two feature films after this, Master and Commander on the way back, and I haven't seen those yet. But man, this film is so just phenomenal. Watching this a little bit older, I was able to appreciate it a lot more. It's definitely more of a drama. It's really not a comedy. I hear it kind of grouped in as that because it's Jim Carrey, but it's really not a comedy. There's comedic moments, but it's definitely more of a drama. But surprisingly, it's not like a super dour film. It's not like some really dark film when it easily could have been. But I think everybody kind of knows the plot of this one. We have this guy Truman Burbank, played by Jim Carrey, who his entire life has been the basis for this reality TV show, where everybody around him, he's living in this fake town where he can't leave. Everybody around him is an actor, and he starts to realize things start happening where like a light from like a set falls in the street early on, and he basically starts to slowly realize what's going on here. And I think the big part of this film as well is that obviously, I think Jim Carrey's terrific in the film, which is funny because I'm not really a big Jim Carrey guy. He's never really been for me. I like him more of a dramatic actor, more playing it straight. But here, I think he's really terrific as well. He's not playing it up, and you really are on his obviously on his side, but a lot of his reactions, he's not being really goofy and stuff. He's being very real, but when he has to be kind of more eccentric and kind of played up for the camera, he's great. But I think the side cast in this film are great as well. Ed Harris, of course, is terrific as well. He comes into the second half of the film as kind of the overseer of the whole thing, and really has this almost like an obsession with Truman. There's that really great shot that I think people have seen everywhere. It kind of reminds me of like Persona in a way, which I would bet money on it was probably a direct nod to, where you have this giant shot of Truman on the TV, and Ed Harris is putting his hand on the TV. Like I said, like probably from Persona. But another actor who I think is really great in the film, and maybe doesn't get talked about enough, is Natasha McElhone. Gyllenhaal, I believe is how you say her name, who was also in this. It was also in Ronin from this year, and she plays somebody who was in Truman's life at one point and got taken out when she tried to, interfere with the production of the show and all that. And the thing that I like about this film so much is that I think the pacing of this film is so strong, because there's a point in the film where you're like, okay, where is this going to go to? What else can you do? And at that point is when you kick into the third act, and it's like, oh, okay, I really didn't appreciate until now just how strong the pacing of this film was, where you get to the undeniable third act when things start to change, when you get into that shift, and I thought it was perfectly timing. It was like that exact moment where I thought, I don't know, okay, what's going to happen next? Let's try and repeat ourselves, but then it goes into it. Because also, speaking of the third act, his friend Marlon, played by Noah Emmerich, is great as well, as Truman's kind of close friend, and you start to see his, maybe not his frustration, but he's definitely trying to, he's like, I don't know what to do, I've been with this guy my whole life, and the breakdown of that. The set design as well is great. We have the whole town, which is very much like a 1950s kind of look, where everything is very like just solid color. Everything's beautiful and bright and perfect. And from there we get a lot of like the fun characters on the side and stuff. Like two of the guys who want to come in for a loan and then they never do. And some other stuff that was great in the film is when we have Truman who's starting to trying to do what he can to either leave town or get away from the people. Like there's a great sequence where he tries to like go on the bus, and what happens there, like they're panicking, like, oh, he's getting on the bus, he's trying to leave, or when he tries to go on the boat, or when he's trying to I'm going to be spontaneous, let's get out of here. Oh, I can't leave the town. Where he starts to kind of realize that, I think this is, like I said before, I'm not a big Jim Carrey guy, but I think he was perfect for the lead here, and he plays it so well, and he's directed so well, and I think a big part of that is Peter Weir is so great with actors that he can get these really three-dimensional performances out of their character, where he is being funny and all that, but he's not playing it up, and he's being real about it as you would probably react in a way. And it's not like, I don't know, this is one where you could have easily went, like I said, could have went really dark with it, and this does have moments that are probably, maybe lightened a bit. I don't know, I imagine that things probably changed a bit, to try to make this a little more accessible, but as it is, this is a pretty solid film from beginning to end. There's really not a lot that I can even say negative about it. I think the pacing, the script, the acting is all great in the film, and then the ending especially, really, the final sequence between two characters is so just powerful. There's one shot in particular, which I think everybody probably knows of, but I won't say what it is. It's just sort of a character running their hand along something, and I think that one just wide shot of them with this background, I love this. The ending of this film as well. The ending is perfect in this film, and especially the very end where here we go. It's perfect. I love this film. This is one that just got so much better on a rewatch, and I think this is probably the one that on this list people have probably seen the most of. So I don't need to say well, this is maybe my next choice, but I've probably seen the most of. But in case you haven't, this is one of these films that gets better with time. Love this film, The Truman Show, number 3. So number 2 and number 1. Here's where things get kind of tricky, because I went back and forth between these two a lot, and even now I'm still kind of like, I don't know. So let me put it this way: number 2 and number 1 are not that far apart. Almost 2 number 1s, because I really like. There's one that I think is the best film of 1998, and there's one that I think is probably my favorite film of 1998. So I really don't know. So number 1 and number 2, I think, are very easily interchangeable. I love both these films for two different reasons, and these are the 2 films in 98 that I gave a 5 out of 5. So it's very tricky, so just take it with a grain of salt, but they're very, very close to one another, practically on the same. But number 2, man, I rewatched this film just actually 2 nights ago. Wow. This undeniably is, to me, the best film of 1998, without a question. This is one of the best films I've ever seen. Maybe you already know what it is, you probably already do, you're probably already saying it, but of course I gotta go to the masterpiece, one of the greatest war films ever, of course, Saving Private Ryan.
Continue, Jackson.
Well, what I mean by that, sir, is you used to put me and this here sniper rifle anywhere up to and including 1 mile of Adolf Hitler with a clear line of sight, sir. Pack your bags, fellas, war's over. Amen.
Oh, that's brilliant, Bumpkin. Hey, so Captain, what about you? I mean, you don't gripe at all?
I don't gripe to you, Ryben. I'm a captain. There's a chain of command. Gripes go up, not down, always up. You gripe to me, I gripe to my superior officer, so on, so on, so on. I don't gripe to you. I don't gripe in front of you. You should know that as a ranger.
I'm sorry, sir, but let's say you weren't a captain, or maybe I was a major. What would you say then?
Well, in that case, I say this is an excellent mission, sir, with an extremely valuable objective, sir. Worthy of my best efforts, sir. Moreover, I feel heartfelt sorrow for the mother of Private James Ryan. I'm willing to lay down my life and the lives of my men, especially you, Ryben, to ease her suffering.
Man, like I said, this probably is, if you ask me on a different day, this probably could be my number one favorite film of 1998, because this film, it floored me. I mean, to say, I know this is one of the most famous war films, this is one of the most famous films, but rewatching it again, man, this is really one of the best films I've ever seen, like ever. This film absolutely blew me away. I think probably everybody's seen this film, but in case you don't, we basically have this battalion led by Cat Miller, played by Captain Miller leads the battalion, played by Tom Hanks, and basically they're sent to go retrieve this one Private Ryan because this private who had lost 3 of his brothers, and the head of the unit is like, okay, we don't want to spare his mom any more heartbreak. We're gonna send home his one kid, but you got to go find him. Which is like they show you the just the scope of where they're at. It's like a needle and they say a needle and a needle stack. I mean the act is insane, and it's as insane as it sounds. So there's 8 of them, and they're going out there, and they're fully aware of the situation where they're like, they're going to risk all of our lives for this one random guy, and where it goes to is just. It's just incredible. Obviously, Tom Hanks is this is maybe my favorite performance of his career. Honestly, I don't think I've seen him in a better performance. I mean, I love comedic Tom Hanks. Don't get me wrong. I probably like comedic Tom Hanks more than dramatic Tom Hanks. But him in this film, his character Cat Miller is so layered and is so you really feel for him, especially when he starts revealing more about his past and kind of the situation that they're all in. These are just guys, just random guys in a situation who are trying not to lose their humanity. And a scene that I'm going to talk about, which is probably my favorite scene in the film, but. Tom Sizemore is great, Edward Burns, and then some other bigger actors. Jeremy Davis kind of comes into it, where somebody who can speak French and German, but he's never really been in combat. So there's some times where he wants to come up to the plate, but he has this like kind of cowardly part to him, and it's like on one hand you're like, this guy is sitting back while these other people are getting injured and all that, but you also can't blame him because he's never been in a situation like this, so any of us probably do the same thing. And then some of the bigger actors like Adam Goldberg, Giovanni Ribisi, Vin Diesel, Paul Giamatti's a small role, and just, even if you don't remember all the characters' names, they're all distinct in their own way, and when they start to go, it's a very ugly film. Like, I mean, I know this is like a Hollywood film, but it's a very ugly look at war, and there's a lot of times I noticed watching it this time where there's no soundtrack playing during a lot of the war sequences. It's very ugly and harsh, and when characters die, it's very, they don't die quickly. They don't give but besides one time, they don't give, which is maybe my only minor gripe, where a character has to say something and then die. But there's like one sequence in the middle, which is my favorite sequence in the film, because of everything that happens, where basically they're going up on this hill that they know is a bad idea, but in this situation, it's better for them to go this way than go all the way around, where Captain Miller is saying, I'm in charge, we're gonna go up here. If you don't like it, then get out of here. And what happens in that 20-minute span is we learn so much about the characters. We learn in a situation that happens, and a character dies in that scene, and it's horrific, and it's emotional, and it started to make me emotional watching it in a very non-Hollywood way, because we learned something about that character. There's a scene earlier, they're in like an abandoned church, and they're all saying kind of some stuff about back home, and that character has a whole speech about something. And it really just hit hard. And then when that character goes and they're referencing that speech earlier, or referencing what they were saying earlier, it like, oh my god, it hits you, man. It really is powerful. And the way the film is shot as well. This is shot by Spielberg's longtime DP. I'm gonna butcher this name as well. Janusz Kaminski. And it's all gray, but it's not. It feels very. It doesn't feel like just. Like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's got a specific look to it where it feels dark and dingy, but it feels honest too. It's a very unglamorizing look at kind of this situation. There is no big epic speech where it's like, I don't know, I think this isn't like some like glamorous like this war film where it's like the Americans come in and they save the day. It's very ugly and very harsh. At the end of the day, was the challenge worth the risk? And probably not, honestly. I mean, obviously there's the whole opening sequence at on the beach in Normandy, and it's a horrific sequence. I mean, it goes on for 20 minutes, and it's just like it's very brutal. It's very unglamorized. There is no big rainbow at the end of at the end of the storm. It's very much like, okay, we survived this. Are we going to survive the next thing? You don't know. And that leads into the rest of the film. And I think Spielberg is like Scorsese, where he's one of these guys, they just have the ability to make a film that's nearly 3 hours and make it fly by. I mean, when this was in the third act, when we get to the noticeable third act, I was like, wow, I've been sitting here for almost 2.5 hours. This is insane. And where it goes to, you really feel for the characters. You feel their frustrations, and you're in there. You feel for them. Where they're like, "Why the hell are we going why are we risking our lives?" There's that one great line where it's like, where Captain Miller says, like, I'm going to butcher the line, but it's just something like, I hope, us risking our lives will help, Private Ryan's mother, with some grief or whatever. It's something like that. Basically, like, why are we risking for this one random guy? And you get it, and you feel for them, and some of the animosity that comes with that, and some of the agitation, and like I was saying with the script, when we started learning more about Captain Miller's past, it comes to the perfect time, and that whole point of what he's saying in terms of war and in terms of not losing your humanity it's amazing, honestly. My only real line of gripes with this film, if any, is just sort of like maybe some stuff at the end, the epilogue, which maybe could have been shortened a bit, but I guess I get it. But that's nitpicky stuff. I mean, this is really like this is one of these films I just don't like. If you don't like the film, that's fine. I just don't get it. I don't get what. I don't understand, like, how you couldn't like this film. Like, my number one film, I get why you maybe wouldn't be able to like this, more of a favorite thing, but this one, like, I just don't get it. Like, this is an undeniable masterpiece, honestly. It's not cliche, and I think the fact that Spielberg made 3 of the greatest films of all time in the span of 10 years, this, Schindler's List especially, and Jurassic Park, it's like, the dude's a master. He has a permanent pass. If he made one of these films, it'd be good enough, but, like, especially Schindler's List, but, like, yeah, he made 3 masterpieces in, like, a 10-year span, and I'm like, unless you're Coppola or Scorsese, I don't really see a lot of directors doing that. Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying, I think everybody's probably seen this film, especially, like, war films. It's a very ugly, honest, emotional, brutal, but powerful film that when it was over, I was just kind of floored. I was just like, wow, this is a very unglamorized, but still like a big production of what it would be like, and yeah, it's undeniable masterpiece. There's nothing anything less than calling it a masterpiece. I think it's just wrong. I really do think it is. This is just one of the greatest films of all time, and probably is my number one favorite film in 1998. But I tell you, I went back and forth between these two for so long, and I'm going to go my number one. My number one is more a personal thing, why I think my number one film is just so incredible because of the script, but Private Ryan is, in my opinion, undeniably the best film of 1998. There's nothing in 1998 that can even... And the thing with this film is that, I don't care about the Oscars or anything like that. Like, when the thing people talk about, Shakespeare in Love won Best Picture over this, I don't care, because the way I look at it, I'm not throwing shade at that film. I watched that film. It wasn't for me, I'll be honest. But I look at it as Saving Private Ryan is still watched almost 25 years later. It's still considered a classic. Shakespeare in Love is remembered as the film that won over Saving Private Ryan. I mean, not throwing shade at that film. You really can't compare them, but let's face it. Who cares who won what? We're still watching this film. Probably less people are watching Shakespeare in Love. Just saying. Anyways, number one. Okay, here it is. No more delaying, my number one favorite film of 1998, maybe a controversial pick, actually probably a controversial pick from a controversial filmmaker, a film that just, one of my favorite films, period, Buffalo 66.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
What?
Don't touch me, all right? Don't touch me.
What do you mean, don't touch me? You're supposed to be
me.
Husband and wife. I'm just trying to make
We're
it
the
look
couple
good.
that doesn't touch one another. We like each other a lot, and we span time together. We just don't touch each other, all right? Now let's span time. Let's use a different color in the back. Do blue, all right? This is the blue period where we... Get up. Don't touch me again, all right? Just look like you like me, and let's span time, all right? You got that? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to waste any more money. This is my last $2 I'm putting in. Yes or no?
Yes.
All right, you do it for me. If you don't want to do it, don't do it.
No, I'll do it.
Okay, let's look like we like each other and span time and do not touch me, okay? Do not touch me.
Okay.
Do not kiss me.
Now, I know it's probably controversial putting this over Saving Private Ryan, because Saving Private Ryan is a masterpiece, an undeniable masterpiece, but Buffalo 66, man, I tell you, this film, man, the script and the directing and the style of this film, it's something else. Buffalo 66, basically we have written and directed and starring Vincent Gallo. He's just released from prison, plays this guy Billy Brown, and he basically gets in a scenario where he has to go home to his parents, so he ends up kidnapping this girl from like a dance studio, played by Christina Ricci, plays this girl Layla, and then from there we kind of follow, he wants revenge on somebody who kind of put him there, so it's a deal that basically went bad. But it's really not about that. It's basically about this main character, Billy, played by Vincent Gallo, who is, I mean, he's the bad dude. I mean, he's just a pathetic kind of like loser, really. But the weird thing about this character is that you never sympathize with him, but Vincent Gallo has such this charisma to him that, like, it makes you really still interested in his character. This is kind of a tricky film to talk about and why I love the film so much, because at no point am I like on this character's side. But Vincent Gallo, what he does is that he makes us like just a bad dude, like just a bad person. But you still kind of at times like he still has this weird quirk where you maybe don't entirely sympathize with him, but you still can see where he's coming from in a way. And especially in the second half when we get a bit of a more like he's starting to become this different person without it turning cliche. And it's tricky because the thing with the film is that we have like, Christina Ricci's character Layla, who he kidnaps at first, and they have a very strange relationship where he is being very cruel to her, being very mean, but they're still like, the way that I see the film, I've heard people kind of call us like there's a great video, by the way, out there that I'm gonna link, that I'm gonna put a clip in, where some critics are talking about like, oh, this film is like, it's just a male kind of ego thing where it's like, oh, this girl is for this guy and all that, but I really don't see it.
I'm not an actor turned filmmaker. I'm not Tim Robbins or Sean Penn. I haven't used the mainstream success that I've had as a movie star, which is none, to finance a film based on my own name as an actor turned director. I was very successful in the 80s as an artist. So to be classified because you didn't do your research and really read about where I was coming from as an actor, Hollywood actor turned filmmaker, is an irresponsible comment. And I sense a little bit of your own personal hang-ups as a woman that made you incapable of transcending them and enjoying the love story, which is quite evolved and quite modern. You, I don't know what to say because your comments were so convoluted I wasn't quite sure what you meant. I guess you just didn't like the film because maybe you're a little bored with cinema or something like that. I don't know. But the biggest problem I have with critics right now is that there are a few filmmakers that I'm attributed to over and over, like David Lynch or John Cassavetes. Two filmmakers I don't really like very much, and I certainly wasn't influenced by. But because journalists like to package things and categorize things, they need to use these names. But it's very lazy. I mean, cinema existed a long time before David Lynch, and there were many films that had unusual families and unusual characters. And in what's called independent cinema, which I don't believe in because there's good movies and bad movies, people find it easy to categorize other artists with figureheads of supposed genres. If a critic has an extremely clever point of view as to why my art or my films or my performance are insignificant or don't have quite the great impact that I had hoped them to have, I can learn from that. I can be objective. When Thelma Adams from the New York Post calls me a Calvin Klein underwear model because I did a CKB perfume commercial, Calvin Klein CKB's underwear model's directorial debut, then I think it's the low road, and that's why I called her up personally on the phone.
Are they personalising it then, do you feel?
It's sophomoric.
This character, Layla, kind of sees this guy, Billy, as really pathetic. I mean, it's Billy who wants to be this hardened criminal, but his whole big conflict in the first part of the film is that he needs to find somewhere to pee and how he's getting so pissed off because of it. In a very, in a comedic sequence, which is another thing about this film is that on the second viewing, that I found this film a lot funnier this time around, a lot of intentionally comical stuff. His whole ordeal is that he needs to find somewhere to pee, and then when he finally does, the problem that he gets into and his reaction about a guy looking at his dick, I mean, it's just so good. And there's great things where he's like, where Layla she first hears him, saying some homophobic slurs, and she's like, hey, watch your language, and he freaks out on her, and then a second later, he's like, hey, you got a quarter for the phone? And just that back and forth of just like, his character is funny without trying to be. He's like this pathetic guy who wants to be this hardened criminal, and Layla kind of sees it out in him. Like, there's a whole point early on where he still has to pee, and he's like, and he forces her to drive him around, And he's like, I'm gonna go behind that tree far away. Now don't leave. You stay right here. And it's funny because like, yeah, anybody else would just leave at that point. He's like, I'm gonna turn my back, but just don't leave. Like, I don't like the way that I watch this film. I don't think that Layla even sees him as a threat at all. It's kind of like, I mean, she's kind of oblivious to a lot of stuff, but she doesn't see him as like this guy. He's just a loser, you know. And that's all he is. Like, he tries to like make these like deals and stuff, and this whole deal went bad. And he calls up. There's like a whole great scene where he calls up Kevin Corrigan in the film. He calls him Goon, and he's like, hey, don't call me Goon, you know. And it's great. And there's like just some of the dialogue that he has is so funny. Like the whole scene where he is in the photo booth where which is the poster for the film where he's with Christina Ricci, and some of the dialogue that he says to her is like we're you know, our love spans time, you know, we're two people who don't touch, and it's just because like she's like making faces like, what are you doing? It's like it's so ridiculous, but the way he portrays that character is so interesting, and you never feel bad for him, but you just kind of see what kind of guy he is. He can't get, you know, he wants to be this sort of this badass, but he can't get close to a woman, and he is just so totally oblivious to everybody around him. And there's some great stuff with his parents, played by Ben Gazzara and Angelica Houston, and that whole sequence is great, and just the guy's just a loser. And then one of my favorite sequences in the film is when he's at a diner and he sees two people who are you know, one of his classmates, and she's basically calling off for being a loser and stuff, and how pathetic that he feels. And I think a big part of it is the way that Vincent Gallo plays that character, where he I can't explain it. I think Vincent Gallo is such a unique, one of a kind person, and I know he's a controversial guy, and I know the production on this film was really tricky, and obviously I don't agree with some of the stuff they did and some of the insults he was saying, and you know, I understand why people would probably hate him, but I don't know. I think he's just an extremely charismatic lead, and it's a shame we never got more movies out of him. I know he's a very, you know, he does stuff and doesn't release it, or he only wants certain people to see it in a way to like spite people. I don't know. Like I mean, I'm in the minority maybe, but I think The Brown Bunny is really solid too, and that's a film that I know people totally hate, and I get it. I get people hate it, but to me, I think there's a lot more going on than just surface level kind of thing that people maybe see it as, you know. And I'm really happy that, you know, yeah, recently I you know, saw the trailer for the new film that he's starring in. Shut In, I think it's called, and I'm like, yeah, it looks cool. It's great to see him back, and I just think that Vincent Gallo is just a really interesting character actor, or actor, I should say. He's playing mostly more of himself, but yeah, this film, and especially where it goes to in the end, is so, I just love how, I don't want to say romantic, because it's not even the way it is, but there's a great, one of my favorite scenes in the film is when he's going to leave Christina Ricci to go do what he has to do, and she's saying like, and there's a great emotional, quiet scene, which is like, you know, I have a feeling you're not going to come back, and you can see kind of the hesitation in his character, just like, do I go and do this thing that I know is going to end badly, or do I stay here and, you know, with this girl who's been with this whole time? And that great kind of back and forth, that mental kind of feeling that he has, and where that goes to, and especially the final sequence in this film. This is the final sequence where he's in like a coffee shop, and the way that he interacts with the characters, the way they all play that, I think is so great. Where you just, I don't want to give anything away, but you just totally have that same feeling that he does. I've just that scene in particular, I can't really say much about because it might be a spoiler, I don't know, but it is the end of the film. But yeah, like I said, this film it makes a totally subjective thing. I know people probably would think like, oh, what, this film better than Saving Private Ryan? Like, no, it's not better than Saving Private Ryan. I just like this more than Saving Private Ryan. Saving Private Ryan is, in my opinion, undeniably the best film of 1998, but this is my favorite film of 1998, and on the second viewing, it just made me love it even more. This is one of my favorite films, period, and I just really hope that Vincent Gallo ends up doing more stuff in the future. I really hope he comes back and decides to release that movie that he never released, the one from 2010, I think he did. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, I love this film. This is one of my all-time favorite films. The character writing in this is so strong. I know he didn't write the film. This was Alison Bagnall who wrote it, but this is his film, and he did the story behind it. But yeah, no, this is just a masterpiece, I think, and one of the funniest and interesting performances from a character in a film like this. So that's my number one favorite film in 1998, Buffalo 66 with Vincent Gallo. So that was 1998. I'm going to go through my list really quickly. I watched 56 films, and I'm going to just, go from the bottom to the top. I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm just going to run through them, and some films are going to be like, what? This film didn't make it, this one didn't make it. Like I said, it's all favorites, so you're probably going to be like, oh, Big Lebowski, Rushmore, they weren't in your top 10. I like both those films, but, I like other films first. So, going to go from 56 to number 1. Going to run through them kind of briefly. So, and some of these you might be like, what? That's that low, but, like I said, just personal preference. So, my least favorite film of 1998, the film I really, really didn't like, and number 56 is What Dreams May Come. really didn't like the film. From there, 55, Shakespeare in Love. 54, Flowers of Shanghai. That's the one that I might, you know, people really like that film, and I just had trouble connecting with the characters and the story on that. But I get why. I respect that film a lot, but I don't think it wasn't for me. Leave it at that. 53, A Simple Plan. 52, Soldier. 51, Love is the Devil. 50, Permanent Midnight. 49, Velvet Goldmine. 48, The Red Violin. 47, Celebrity. 46, The Acid House. 45, Fallen. 44, You've Got Mail. 43, Out of Sight. 42, Waking Ned. 41, The Wedding Singer. 40, Babyface. 39, Samurai Fiction. 38, Twilight. 37, Snake Eyes. 36, The Faculty. 35, The Quiet Family. 34, Rushmore. 33, Fucking 'Em All. 32, Hillary and Jackie. 31, Hard Rain. And 30, Small Soldiers. 29, The Idiots. 28, He Got Game. 27, The Apple, the Iranian film. 26, The Opposite of Sex. 25, Ronin. 24, Little Detour Needs to Fly. 23, Clay Pigeons. 22, The Interview. 21, Bulworth. And 20, Basketball Dude. 19, Rush Hour. 18, Last Days of Disco. 17, Divorce Iranian Style. 16, Pleasantville. 15, The Big Lebowski. 14, The Thin Red Line. 13, Rounders. 12, American History X. And just barely missing it, a film I do love a lot, number 11, The Celebration. So my top 10 again. Number 10, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Number 9, The General. Number 8, Dirty Work. Number 7, Pi. Number 6, The Dinner Game. Number 5, Central Station. Number 4, Croupier. Number 3, The Truman Show. Number 2, Saving Private Ryan. And number 1, Buffalo 66. So I appreciate you guys listening to all of this. So we're now going to randomize into what the next year will be. So we have my list here from 1930 to 2020. So can I get a drum roll, please? So the next year we'll be doing a top 10 of will be 1958. All right, so come back in March, or maybe halfway through March, and we're going to do our top 10, my top 10 favorite films of 1958. So I appreciate you guys listening to this far. I have plenty more ideas for videos, but I just want to do this as kind of like a fun little thing. Like I said, I'm not like an expert. I'm not like, you know, some film like expert or anything like that. I just am a fan. I like to watch movies, so I figured hopefully I'd maybe turn you guys on to some films you haven't seen yet, or maybe you're like, you know, I've heard of that, but I haven't seen it yet, or maybe you're like, Daniel, this is totally stupid. Here's where you're wrong and you're an idiot, and I say, okay, you know, it's all good. So I appreciate you guys listening to all this, and I hope to do more videos in the future. So thanks for listening, and see you in a couple months for my top 10 of 1958. All the best.
And cut. Perfect. Print it. Let's move on.